Islam. Welcome to Moor's Heritage and History School. This is your host, Anita L., along with my co-host, Ms. Raim Ellis L.
Peace, Anna E. Peace, Moors worldwide. It's great to be back. We're getting right into it.
Yeah, I know. I meant to play the recording of the Moors kidnap, but apparently it wasn't to be tonight.
It is. Let's go in.
Yes. Also, we have Mariah Bay.
Peace and love to all.
All right.
Islam, peace and love.
And Cujo Adwael.
Islam, peace and love.
All right.
Islam,
peace and love.
To the MIA Moors.
Yeah.
Islam to the MIA Moors.
Good. That covers it. Yeah.
We back. We
right.
definitely back.
Yes. Before we get started, just want to let everyone know the chat room is now open. I want to send a big shout out to our family listening around the globe. I'm not even going to bother to go into, the various different corporations that Moor is on me, and suffice it to say, I'm happy to be in touch with and know that we have family around the globe listening near various corporations. So thank you so much for joining us, building with us, sending us those positive energies so that each week we can come back and do this again. Let's see. Before I get started, I got a message from someone who has a Metro PCS phone. They said that they can get into the show by calling the 425-569-5201 number, as well as the original number that we used to call in on, the 347-945-5899 number. So those are the two numbers that people who have Metro PCS, you can get in calling those two numbers, and because it is a Metro PCS issue. It's not a Blog Talk issue at all. It's through the Metro PCS. Let's see.
They're trying to be greedy.
Huh?
I said they're just trying to be greedy.
Well, yeah, that's right. They are. Also, tomorrow we will be live at the National Theater. Abdullah Mosley Talib Bey. Say that right. I always leave out the ill.
Abdullah L. Talib Mosley Bey.
Abdullah L. Talib Mosley Bey will be doing the class tomorrow on etymology, and Rosmariah and Ms. Raim, are you going to be there tomorrow?
I'm not sure what's going on. If everybody rolling up, then yeah, I'll go.
All right. Roz will be there tomorrow because
I am working on that. I just want to say I am seriously working on that because I didn't come last week because we were traveling. But what I'm finding now, depending on how I get this done, I'm not sure because of all the work I have to catch up on from taking the journalistic vacation. So I'll post it. But the class will be there. It's a matter of whether I'll be there.
So but the class, Abdullah L. Mosley Talib Bey will be there tomorrow doing the etymology class. So make sure in the area, doors open at 6:30, class begins at 7:30. And if you can't make it there, in the flesh, you can call in and listen to the broadcast. And I think that is it for announcements. All right, so today's broadcast is entitled, let's see, To All, Open Your Eyes and Look Around. The truth is right in front of your face. Many times if we open our eyes and look around, there is evidence of who is who and what is what right in front of our face. Just as we discovered with our trip to Ellis Island, we bring you a recounting from and around the Virginia Company. You know it today is the Commonwealth of Virginia, a union. As we recount join us as we recount what was unveiled. Now, the journalistic recording that Roz is referring to took place, I believe, last week, and her and Ms. Raheem went, and gathered some information that, believe it or not, is right in front of our faces if we just open our eyes and look and pay attention. So they are going to give us an account of all the interesting and amazing things that they discovered on their travels. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Yeah, Ms. is biting at the chomp to share some things, Miss. You go ahead, and I'll follow.
Hey, where you want to start, Ma? Because this is so much.
It's crazy, right?
It's crazy. I was going to ask you where to start. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? That's such a good question. That's why it's going to be booked and DVD'd. But it's just so much, I just want to add this as we go in. It even goes down. Now, a lot of you listening have not listened to folklores and myths and things. Like when we were little, dating ourselves here, but it's not just a dating. It's something that should continue to go on. A lot of the efforts that have been made in the reliance of public schools and those are corporate institutions and Christian corporate institutions, and they have an agenda. And that agenda increases as the generations continue to rise. We used to have the fairy tales, the storybooks, those things are so important because they're really true folklore, as we would call it, about us, down to the story of Hansel and Gretel. That's all I'm going to say right now about that, because that's some hot stuff right there, man. And I grew up learning those, and many people listening did as well. And what's really interesting is that we never knew that it was really about us. Never knew. And also lessons of the universe. Yes.
True.
Yeah,
and the biggest giveaway was the EL at the end.
Yes.
And it's funny, it's crazy because we got back last Tuesday and I couldn't do nothing until Saturday. And it didn't hit me, like I knew I had a lot to absorb, but I've been in introspection mode since we got back. And we've talked about it because we've experienced it. But it wasn't until just right now, just when y'all turned over the floor, that, you know what I'm saying, I actually want to shed tears. Like, I'm dead serious. Not even on no, like, I like, it's crazy. But look, I'm going to just say this. Let me just start with this. First and foremost, I want big thanks platform, Moor's Heritage and History, MHHS Eyes Wide Open blog talk. About to.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Hold up. Okay, hold up. Am I good?
Yeah.
I need to make sure I'm good. Let me know if I'm not good, because I want to make sure this message come off clear. Am I good?
Yes.
Okay. So like I was saying, I want to give a big thanks to this platform, Moor's Heritage and History School, MHHS Eyes Wide Open. As we are approaching. All right, hold up. I got you. No problem. I got you. Don't worry about that. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. All right. So, am I good now? I'm
yes,
good?
Yes, you are.
All right, cool. So like I was saying, trying to say, I just want to give a big thanks to this platform. Like I said, Moor's Heritage and History School and MHHS Eyes Wide Open Blog Talk Radio, as well as Candyland Moore's RV Bay Publications. But a real big specific shout out to all the listeners, like, and I'm talking like thanks to everybody listening now who will listen in the future, but those who've been listening from day one, like day one. Let me say this, if I can, because I just need to get this off my chest. And, all right, so for those who know, right, I'm going to go into this, but I got to preface it like this because this is how it hit me and how I've been absorbing this experience. I'm dead serious. Since I came back, we've been back 7 days, and I haven't been dealing with too much of anything except for, like, Saturday night, Sunday morning. You know what I mean? I couldn't even really – it's just so much. Like, if I never went to school again or attended a class or gave a class, we came back with so much information to go. I know it's going to take like it's just crazy. Well, but let me say, a while ago, we did a class, and it had to be about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. It had to be, and I was asking the listeners, you know, at the studies I was endeavored in at that time, working on Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry Part 3, and I was like, hold on, what's this battle of Appomattox? There's something about Appomattox, or you know the original appellation or original pronunciation. So I'm like, right, and they was talking about this quote-unquote queen of Appomattox, but I knew it wasn't a European because of the appellation, right? So when I put that out there, I said I couldn't find any information on anything about this quote-unquote queen of Appomattox or Appomattox, which, if for those who don't know, that's an area in so-called Virginia, right? So when I said that, for those who remember, and big thank you to everybody who's been listening since back then, that when I said it, I was like, I can't find anything about it, but I feel like it's not time yet. But I'm going to find out something about her. Sure enough, we went down there. I got the information just from this last trip. I wasn't expecting to, but it happened. So it's time. Man, if I, like, look. Okay, so we went down there, so-called Richmond, Virginia. We visited a couple of places. I don't even want to just say so-called Richmond, but a lot of places. And I will be posting up some of the video footage, but there will be a lot that's going to be utilized in the documentary because I told you that Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry Part 3? We're still doing it, and I thank everybody who was and who is anticipating that. But what happened for me was, like, in the midst of doing this, learning more about my own family history, like, it hit me in a way where I'm like, oh, wow, like, there's a lot I need to learn about my own family. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like specifically after my grandfather's passing, and for those who was in attendance when I did the preview in so-called Manhattan, you saw some of the things I was talking about. Some of you heard it. But nonetheless, when you see it, it's going to all make sense. So it felt like it was something missing, and it was. But needless to say, that was retrieved back or collected back, when we went down there. So I'm going to start here. All right, so what should we do? Should we start with the battery, or should we start with the plantation? Which you want to talk? Which one should we go in on? Because there's a lot of information that, like I said, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't focus on anything for about 5 days straight. So because that's how much information is that we just received. Like, it's just ridiculous. So this is what I'm saying. It put me back into also a student mode, having to teach at the same time. So, it's all good, but where we at? Hansel and Gretel, right? So,
well, I don't know because, from Fort Monroe. Go ahead. Oh, don't forget now, you're talking Hansel and Gretel and how we got to that. And
so let me,
what Fort Monroe is in terms of antiquity. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so cool. We went down there. We was at or near so-called Hampton, Virginia, right? And our family took us to a beach out there. We just was like, whatever. We're gonna have a good time. We at the beach. We're going to the beach. We're gonna deal with the ocean, whatnot. So we go. Sure enough, we come up to the beach, and there's this big, humongous fort. Literally fort, and big acknowledgement to Anna E, because I recall her always talking about, these forts. They all started off as forts. I had no intention of coming across this, but this is just how it unfolded. So the fort was called Fort Monroe. So we did a little bit of research on it. Turns out Fort Monroe was according to President Obama, this is where the first quote-unquote slave ships came in at. And I need y'all to understand something, because the fort wasn't built. The fort was built in the 1800s. So think about that. The first slave ships, according to how they're telling it, came through in the 1800s. Now, we could take that statement deeper, and we are, because we know the original slaves are Slavics. And there was some proofs in our face that is undisputable. I'm just thankful we got it on camera because, like I said, I don't know. It just was like when this show started and I was about to start explaining, I just teared up, you know what I mean? Because there's just so much truth, lies, history, refinement that is going on right now that is just amazing. So, So we at so-called Fort Monroe, and hold on. Before that, it's a lot to talk. There's just so much to talk about, because people will open carry out there. So you know what I mean? Like it's real. People will be open carrying out there. But anyway, we go in there. So this particular beach, they went through the show ID, to make sure that you good getting on, because they got two different passes. They got the pass for, anybody who's just there for the beach, but the beach also has a bar. So if you get the pass, they just put the wristband around your wrist, and they don't have to ask you for ID all the time. You show your ID at the door, and then you just get the pass. So we got in with the ID, you know what I'm saying? No questions asked. Now, mind you, this was an ex-military fort. So,
but before that's what I wanted. Okay, let me set the stage on that real quick. First of all, Fort Monroe is a military. Afterwards, it became a military training location, and the beach was private for military personnel only. They recently opened that private military to the public, and I have to tell you that when you know what you know and you do what you do, and you deal with the Constitution and federal, it's not what you think it is. So I just wanted to make this point so here we are at a basic military base and showing an ID. And go ahead, say from there. No questions asked at all.
None, zero. You know, not even. Oh, I never seen this before. Didn't say any of that. You know what I mean? He just looked at it. It's straight back, like he was supposed to do. You know what I mean? But anyway, so
from municipalities that mess with you, because that's how they feed their families. But go ahead.
Yeah. Right, because these are the highwaymen. These were those were the slaves who came on the ships, or the Slavics who came on the ships. We got the evidence that in reason in mind, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I just want to preface it with this. So we're at the beach by the fort. Now, you know, we out there. I got the camera, because you have to ride past the fort to get to this beach. So I'm seeing this stone monument, and they got plaques on it from the way you got to come in. So I'm like, well, you know we about to go capture whatever's on this building. At least I am. Mom was like, oh, nah, you know, I'm going to go with you. So we got basically another classic, something like into the museum tour. But this one is just crazy. This is going to be crazy. But look, so we walk in. They got a couple of off-limit signs. The cracks on the wall are telling the story about certain things. And they were saying that, you know, on the premises that there's still munitions from old explosives and firearms that could still be laying on the ground. So if you see any of that, they want you to give it to them. I'm like, well, if we find it, that's a relic we're keeping, straight point blank. But anyway, so we walk in, and I'm like, Mom, pull up the history of what you can on this. So she pulls it up because it's like two separate institutions, but they're all one. So you got Fort Monroe and Battery Church right there. It's all a part of the same fort. But Battery Church was another building. So when Mom pulls up the information, and she's like, oh, at first she said this was a Canadian fort. I'm like, well, what the hell is a fort from Canaanland doing in, you know, the alleged U.S. This is saying something. Then she dug a little deeper and came up with the story of Hansel and Gretel, following the breadcrumbs. So I'm like, well, what does Hansel and Gretel have to do with Fort Monroe? What is this about? Like, why would that be a connection? You telling me a fairy tale has something to do with a war fort? So she's like, yeah, this is what it is. So I'm like, oh. So I'm anxious. I want to know, because we've been trained or taught to really respect or understand allegories. Like the Wizard of Oz is more than what you're watching. It's a message that's behind just what you're seeing. So we could break that down, but we're not going to do that. And most Moors, studied Moors, already know the science. And if they was to watch it again today, it would hit them a whole nother way. But anyway, nonetheless, or the Matrix, you know, these are things where you know that something of truth is being told in what they call science fiction, but really it's an unlimited platform of the mind to be able to, you know what I mean, give these visions. So anyway, study the story of Hansel and Gretel. Soon as we got back, because the phone was acting up, it was a lot going on. But it hit me that the story of Hansel and Gretel is an affirmation of the fact of what Noble Drew Ali already said about this being for the young and yet unborn. And this is a specific message for Moors, the young Moors, or Moors who grew up without their parents. Like, there's a lot of value in you. Like, I don't care how old you are right now, you know, because we met people that are our kinfolk, you know, and they're well, in the 40s, 50s, but they still have certain issues from way back when they was young. And that's just not, I'm not just singling out anybody. There's a lot of people like that who never get a chance or even recognize that they still have issues from the youth, whether it been something like, so, if you got core issues from when you're young and you never deal with those through life, you're going to have certain triggers that spark those emotions. So I want anybody who hasn't dealt with their come up or their upbringing and they feel as though it was problems because your parents didn't want you, you felt worthless or whatever. This story is for you. All right. So the Hansel and Gretel theme was this, right? The children. Now, forgive me because I forgot whether Hansel is the male or Gretel is the male, or whether Hansel is the daughter.
Hansel is the male, and Gretel is the. That's where you get Gretchen from. Hold
on, you gotta emphasize that the EL, the Hansel, like, and the Gretel, like, you know what I mean? So look, their father, right? Because they didn't have their biological mother in their upbringing. They just had their father and his wife, which made her their father's wife, their stepmother. So the stepmother got in the father's head with the pillow talk. She's like, well, these children are expensive. We can't afford to keep them. You know what I mean? We should come up with a plan to get rid of them. Like, we take them out in the woods and leave them in the woods, in the natural environment. Now, one of them, because Hansel and Gretel are blood brothers and sisters, but one of them heard this plot and this plan, because at first the father was like, nah, these are my children. I don't want to do that. But nonetheless, she got in his head with the pillow talk. And he agreed with her that they should get rid of the children because they didn't have the proper pecuniary or finances to take care of them, right? So, no, excuse me. The specific word used was abandon the children. That was the specific word used in the story, abandon the children. So they abandoned the children in the forest. So Hansel, if that's the male, he was smart enough. He was like, since they already knew what the parents was about to do to them, he brought stones, right? And when he brought the stones, he laid the stones on the path to get to where they're going. Now, when they got there, I forgot the first time, I think they made it. Oh, yeah, he made it back because he left the stones on the trail. So they made their way back home after they left them. So the second time they tried to leave him, he brought breadcrumbs, which are not as solid. And you can look at the stones as, jewels, solid wisdom, things like that. But the second time, he wanted to bring something that was going to show them the way back home, but he brought breadcrumbs. And when he brought the breadcrumbs the second time, when he tried to follow the trail back, the birds ate the crumbs. So there was no way to tell their way back home. So they officially lost and abandoned in the woods, the natural environment. So Gretel starts crying. She's like, they don't love us. They left us in the woods. And Hansel was like, nah, we good. The moon is rising, pointing it back to the astrology, the astrologic. He was like, the moon is coming up. So we're going to find our way back home. Anyway, they out in the woods. They get lost, couldn't find their way back home. But they found this artificial house, or this house made of candy, that they could eat up if they wanted to. But nonetheless, it was an artificial house. It wasn't solid. It wasn't that stone structure. You know what I'm saying? It could crumble. You know what I mean? It wasn't It wasn't durable, let me say that. So this artificial house ends up being that a witch lives in there, right? Of course, now we know the witch is the wise one, etc. But this was a wicked witch, right? So they find themselves up, and a lot of people know this story, but look at these points. So after these children being abandoned, they find themselves in an artificial house with a wicked witch who had Hansel locked up because she was such a savage. She wanted to eat Hansel, the boy. So she had him in a cage, and she was blind. She couldn't see, right? So she had no vision really, but she had a small eyeglass. That was the only thing that would somewhat help her see. So she had Hansel locked up in the cage, and she was feeding him all this food because she wanted him to get fat so she could eat him. But what she would do was she would check on him and be like, stick your finger out so that I can see how fat you're getting. But since she couldn't see, he would stick a chicken bone out. Now, those who know the voodoo, you already know what time that is. He would stick a chicken bone out, but she would never notice that it wasn't his finger. She would just be like, you're not getting fat, because he would never show her his finger. He would always have her touching something else since she couldn't see anyway, right? So meanwhile, he's locked up in like a human bird cage. His sister is there, and his sister is all the way up under the witch's jurisdiction. She got his sister under a spell. Now, you know how that applies to Moors today. You know why Noble Drew Ali is holding the woman on the cover of the 101s. No, there's not no disrespect. I'm just telling you the story. So she's under a spell, right? Her brother is locked up, and the witch wants her brother to get fat, so because he's food. He's food, but she don't want to kill his sister because she need his sister, right, to do what she say, to help her see, because she can't see. She has no vision. So now the sister is an ancilla or a servant, right, working for this wicked witch who got the wand, and it was because of the wand that she was under the spell. So she'll do something like, what was it? How did it go? She'll bang on the floor with the wand 3 times and be like, do my will and be still. In other words, inactive. Do what I say, nothing more or less, right? Something like that. She was like, do my will and be still to the sister because the sister was helping her do everything. She was enslaved in the house with her brother. It's just she wasn't in the cage like he was. So a long time goes past, and the witch is like, the wicked witch is like, you know what? You're not gaining any weight. You're not getting any bigger. Since you're not getting bigger, maybe the both of y'all together would be a great meal. So she planned on eating both of them now, right? So she tells, since she couldn't do nothing, she's like, Gret El, start the fire, right? Because every time she would cook, she would have the sister, Gret El, doing her kitchen work because she couldn't see. So this time she thinks that she's about to get it off. Long story short, Gret El starts the fire. The witch is about to throw her brother Hansel into the fire, but instead, they push the witch in the fire, and when they push the witch in the fire, she's burning. Of course, you know the ritual, the purification with the fire, etc. And then they run upstairs and find that she got all these jewels and all this gold, right? So she's in the fire. Now they're able to escape. Oh, hold on. Another thing, too, is they had Europeans inside of brown gingerbread cookies. Like, so basically the house was artificial, the people was artificial. It was a perfect example of the 14th Amendment citizen, or the 14th Amendment person, excuse me, because everything about it was artificial. Her power, her house, her food, you know what I'm saying, having people trapped as persons or face masks in these cookies, the sweet bread, the breadcrumbs, if you will, right? So, anyway, they push her in the fire when she thought she was about to eat something, and they go upstairs, they grab the jewels and the gold, and they get out. They find their way back home after they got this wicked witch out the way, right? So they come home. Not only do the children make it back home, but they make it back home with a remedy that the parents wanted to get rid of them for lack of anyway, because the parents was like, we're going to abandon them because we don't have the, finance or the wealth to take care of them. Well, not only did they get abandoned, right, they came back with everything that the family needed and got the witch out the way. So I thought that was an interesting story as it related to this fort, because I'm like, all right, if this is where the quote-unquote first slave ships arrived, I'm pretty sure, this is a great starting point for the history. You know what I mean? It is definitely a great starting point. I don't know if you want to add on anything to that, because there's still a lot more to discuss. But just from my interpretation of that Hansel and Gretel story, it's like, okay, he assured his sister they was going to get home based off of astrology, but it was like something else in the plan. It was something in the divine plan that they had to go through to really come back home with what they needed for the family to survive, even though they was being abandoned, much like how they have our sisters and youth, in these artificial houses today, taking children from the babies. But these ones were ones that were literally abandoned by their father, because the stepmother got in his head and gassed him off the pillow talk that they couldn't do what they had to do. You know what I'm saying? And it was like,
I would say the stepmother, I'm just going to give my little short analysis on that, because it is absolutely indicative of what's going on today. It appears that we've abandoned our estate, but abandonment, if you look it up, has to have the intent to abandon. So therefore, if there's no intent, it's very hard to prove that, or to say that it's abandoned. And also, what hit me is the substitute mother. The stepmother, right? That was the substitute mother. You mentioned about the artificialness of it all, and which is what, like you said, the 14th Amendment person. And the story itself is interesting because, like you said, prophet said this is for the young and yet unborn. They had to bring the jewels back. So what did they have to? They had to go through something to get to something, to realize that the jewels were always there, if you will, because it is. It's our estate. So when you look at this, again, I have to keep going back to the stepmother, because a lot of us are in that state of mind, without the greater respect for mother. Like, for instance, you're talking about legitimacy. There's so many people out here who think that they may think that they're illegitimate because their father wasn't around. No disrespect to the father. But the truth of the matter is that if you were born of a mother, you are legit, too legit to quit. How's that? You are absolutely legit. It has nothing to do with that. So this story is talking about those who, Hansel and Gretel is talking about those who are dealing with a substitute mother. I mean, it's really interesting. What I find interesting is that all my life, we've read these stories, and some listening have and never really got it. So and then it's also similar coming back home. They didn't leave home. Like, they were trying to get them to leave home, leave them in the woods, get them lost, let them get eaten up by the wicked witch, the witch, and all that. And these children managed through it all. That's the strength in it. These children managed through it all, and similarly to the Wizard of Oz, like she came back home because she never really left. And that's what we have to understand, is that this is our ancestral estate, and that, we're born into it, just by the mere fact of being born, which is why this is about your birthright and about them trying to be birthright theft. So the stepmother indicating that the father, who was their father, their real mother wasn't around, that indicates the whole setup that we're looking at today. It really, really does. And allowing, someone else to substitute your position or to usurp it in any way. So when they came back home with all that was needed for the family, it's similar to, Dorothy coming back and never really leaving. So it has a deeper meaning. It has a deeper story. It excited me because, as you said, Hansel and Gretel. Now, how did that? We were reading that fairy tale when we were young. We didn't know anything about elves. This is the problem, not knowing. This is why the prophet said, I come to teach you to be yourself. Go back to the mindsets of your ancient foremothers and forefathers, because we should have been able to recognize the titles of L, period, anytime we saw it. I'm talking about we, the generation of children that came after. It should have never been lost. Right. It should have never been lost and or abandoned. And it really doesn't matter why. What matters now is that we know. And when you know better, you do better. So with reading those stories, even that you, I, and whoever's listening that has read them, it's amazing that, we didn't recognize our own story.
Right.
Then we talk about our own family. That's kind of interesting in that respect. So,
yes, it definitely is.
Yes. Can we mention one other thing? I won't mention the name, the plantation that we went to, because I know you said,
Hey, hold on. Before you go there, though, let me finish with this Fort Monroe before you do that.
All right.
All right. So look. So another thing that is significant about the history of Fort Monroe is that while quote unquote President Obama was on his first term, one of his first, what did they call? It was a certain type of authority he exercised. Yeah, no, but they referenced a specific type of authority that he exercised to make this happen. It was a specific type of authority that he utilized for the first time. I think they said it was in October 2011 or something like that. And he invoked the Antiquities Act to get the Fort Monroe listed as a national, on the National Registry of Historic Places. This is one of the things he did. Now, the Antiquity Act goes back to 1909, right? And they had to invoke this quote-unquote act in 1909 to preserve, Native American artifacts and buildings, ancient buildings, because what happened was this. Like you see some of those pilgrims, Europeans, pale-skinned nations of Europe, they come out the canyons and out of the places in the western part of northwestern Mexico or North America before, where what you look at as Mexico today, like the borders on the map was way up into what they're calling United States and Canada today. So, we all know that that's northwestern Mexico. But nonetheless, the Antiquities Act, to prevent people from taking artifacts and selling them, because they were finding vases and vaseware and things like that Europeans was running down on, and they called them pot hunters. This is real talk. They had a class of people called pot hunters, meaning it was a time where the pilgrims looked at certain things as open season. They abandoned it like this, we're going to go here and there and, get these things, and they're making millions, off of your ancestors' skills and abilities that, they just recognize the worth in. So we might look at it as a vase, but they're looking at it like this came from, a divine being who was here on this land first, the Moors, you know what I mean? Our Moroccans, the true Americans. So they knew that in the timeline of the history, because you got to remember, they was all about booty and prize. So, if they could get things without a struggle or anything like that, they're going to take it. So they would run up in these canyons and collect artifacts and sell them. And then they had to stop that because they was like, nah, these are, historical artifacts. I guess nonetheless there were other institutions who wanted to claim them, how they do, try to get the underclass out the way. But nonetheless, all had the same agenda, you know what I mean? So it's like if you find a gold mine today, or somehow, some way, the Pilgrims will try to find a way to interject it. Like, even if you hit the lottery, they want to tax you and all of this craziness. But I wanted to say that specific thing about Fort Monroe, that was a relative to Obama's first specific type of authority. You give me a second before the show out, I'll pull it up and make sure that that's very clear. And now it makes sense today why Trump is trying to reverse that. Like, he don't, certain things you see, but you don't have a history to connect. So you don't even care. You're like, what is that about? Who cares? You know what I'm saying? But he's trying to erase a specific part and certain protections that was written into history, you know what I mean, to preserve Moorish culture and things like that. So, at least from a commoner anyway. But, yeah, that was an interesting thing. So the pot hunters.
That might be why it opened up to the public too. Once they made it a national. Because
they just closed it down as an operative fort in 2011, something like that. Yeah.
Right. They were training in there. They were doing military training.
Yeah, you could feel it too. You could definitely feel it too. But we could go in a lot on just that. We could just go in a lot on Fort Monroe, but there's so much to touch on. I'm serious, y'all. It's just like we got so many different things to talk about. I was at a loss for words for a couple of days.
Let me interject something here then at this point, because yes, we were what you might call all over the place, but all over the place was all over us, and we were directed directly to where we needed to be under divine law to cover many things. And one of the things, one of the I'm going to say what happened at the so-called plantation, and actually we're only going to give it to the people as a food for thought and let it go, and then expound on it in the documentary. But it's something to think about. But prior to that, we were looking for that which you covered in one of your writings and in the first Denial of Ancestry 2 that you did. I'm sorry, not Denial of Ancestry. Who are Moors, Asiatics, Americans? Well, the Lumpkin Jail. We were looking for it because they're doing a lot of construction. The first time we were down there, we couldn't get close to it because of the construction. So this time we're closer. They're still doing construction, but still we were able to get on top of it a bit. Although the actual house, we realized, was excavated. It was an excavation process, and the wild thing is that it was underground when they found it, and that's why they made it. They made it roped it off and took as much information. What was crazy to me is that finding the Lumpkin jailhouse is the founding. Listen to that is the founding basis for the Virginia University. I was just floored. I was like, wow. But The other thing is that as we're looking for it, there's a modern European, and it looks like he was working in one of the houses there under the train track area where this is. And we were just saying, can you tell us which way is to the Lumpkin jailhouse? And he came out. Do you remember this, Miss? I know you have it.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Oh, this is some powerful thing. He comes out the door and he says, oh, yeah, it's this way. And he's telling us where it is. And then he says, yeah, and you see that little white house right there? He said, we just moved that house. And they got saved, being demolished, because this is how ruthless these people are. They're going to be doing some other work. So this house, a little teeny white house, he said, that house right there, he said, a slave woman was the slave master's, had 8 children for the slave master. This is what he says out of his mouth. You got to see it and hear it for yourself. He says, and he made her and all of the 8 children that she had for him live in this teeny, teeny little house. He says, now, that's just not right. He really felt it in his heart. He said, that's really just not right. There's something that was very wrong. He said that she was a really attractive woman. She had to be, because the slave master grabbed onto her and had all these children. So we thought, wow, right from their mouths, the truth is abound, the truth is the light, and the truth brings you to the dawning of awareness. And we are coming to this apex, all of us. And you either got to be on board or you're going to just be fodder, as has been said before. And that's why it's like you can count on one hand, and that's not exactly literal, but it is in a way, because all of us on this line listening can probably only count a few people they know that really have the concepts of national principles, the heritage, the history, etc. The other portions of the people are still they haven't studied enough or researched enough to really come out of this mental slavery, because the truth of the matter is, as much as people hate the study word, it's the only way you're going to come out of the mental slavery. The same way you got in is the way you get out. Indoctrinated our minds with maxims of lies instead of maxims of truth. As Prophet Noah Ali says, please, instill in your child the maxims of truth. But what has happened is the maxims of lies, deceit, trickery, etc. But what we have also found that is, that is true is that it really is not hidden. I mean, the fact that it really is not hidden is the reason why you have to research and study. You have to be in environments and listen to things that regards that. You must do so, because you're not going to get it any other way. So some people are looking for quick fixes, and then they're going down the wrong road. Not that you can't do commerce, not that you can't do whatever, but if you really want to get this stuff, you have got to understand birthright. You have got to understand. You have to have that as your foundation, and then you have to be able to ferret through the lies. So we go to a plantation. This is a different one from when we went before. We play strategies. We play innocent. We already have the answers to the questions that we're asking for the most part. But we want to ask them to get the answer. What I find so interesting is that you have these modern Europeans. So you ask the question, because all the things they point to, they now especially say Native American. They don't. Now it's like politically correct to say Native Americans, and the reason is that these modern Europeans can still try to hide under being Native Americans when they are not, and that is real clear. So we just asked, well, as she was talking, we asked. She says, "All right, you saying Native Americans, and so meaning that they really weren't Indians?" And she just, as matter-of-factly as we're talking to you right now, she says, "Oh, no, of course not. They weren't Indians. That's just what they call them because Columbus thought he was in India, and, and that's just what it is. But, of course not. They're not Indians." Now, we already know that. But to hear it from them say it, and I find it amazing that
on record from the plantation host, From the plantation host. Oh, yeah. Nah, they might not like that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's on there. It's on there. So, and so then I'm thinking, 1895 public school final test, 8th grade public school final test out of or at Salinas, Kansas. They say that in there. And it's amazing how our people still want to call themselves Indians. Now, the only reason you would do that is because you have not studied enough, or you're being led down a road that's going to be a wall, a brick wall. It's not in honor of your ancestors. It's not in honor of your foremothers and forefathers, period. Like, these are the things you ought to know. Now, some people say, well, I know. You know what I mean? We're just going to say we're Indians. No, you're not. You can't, because it puts you in a box. And a lot of people may have thought they've gotten away with that. Well, the time is coming when all things must, everyone must confess their own from their own tongue, and all of the fake stuff, shall melt away, and then you will be standing there naked. Maybe that's not the right word. Then you'll be standing there with nowhere to turn except for to reconsider and rethink and relearn and research and relook. Relook is what respect means. See, to relook or is to respect. Because spectacle is eyes. It's looking, it's seeing. So we have to respect our own, ourselves and our own. And that's what you'll be left with. And so now you're back on the train has left the track, the boat is going, you're gonna have to get on a car, run that train, and learn these things that you cannot get away with it. It's not going to go down this time. It's not happening. It's just not. So that was one of the questions. But the other thing we want to leave you with, and then, if there's something else we want to add, gosh, like you said, there's so much. We go to a place, and on the plaque, see, we're going to give you a great example of it's not hidden. We're going to give you a great example of why the prophet said, if I could just get you to thinking, you'd free yourself. And we're also going to...
No, go ahead.
And we're also going to give great support that the first slaves here on plantations were the Slavics. I know that is such new news to many people. That is such a hard pill. There's no compartment in your mind that has already been developed or underdeveloped or put trash in it for you to put that information, unless you have that exorcism, I call it, and get rid of the old stuff and the lies, not the old stuff, the lies, the untruths, because truth doesn't change nor pass away. So it has been something like we talk about it like it's nothing because we've done the research and we know it's true, but we're not the only ones that know that. Many modern Europeans know that. They're finding out also just as we are and you are. There's still many who just aren't ready to receive that information. And this is why there must be a separation in classes. There must be a separation in your associations, because people who refuse to accept truth that does not change or pass away, ultimately they become dangerous people. They have a right to live in whatever fantasy they choose? Yes. But if you're not about the real, if you're not about the real, get out of this arena. Get out of the arena, because this is very real. Prophet Noble Jalali said, listen, nations don't want the truth because it's too stern. It's a fact. Now, the reasons, again, we go back. It's a great dichotomy here. We go back to why. We can all sit there and say, oh, well, the reason why we're like this is because we were miseducated. Well, it doesn't really matter what the reasons are anymore. What matters is to go down that path, that narrow path. That's what matters. That is what matters, because, and Anna always says it, and we have these conversations like, well, if we all admit that we don't know, if we all admit that we've been miseducated, then it's about time to get on a stick and start, fixing that. If we can admit that we were not taught, many of our children, these past generations, were purposely not taught to read, then it's time to, get to doing that. Don't feel bad about it. It was a plan, a social engineering plan to have you in the position you're in today, and the feeling in the way you feel, many may feel today, of inadequacy, incompetentness, and, no confidence. So you just acknowledge what it is and then begin going down the road to fix it, and that's really all that's required of you, because if you're truly going down that road to fix it, it shall be fixed. So, so here's the puzzle. Here's the I'm gonna call it a puzzle, I guess. If you go to a plantation and on the entering plaque they give you the history and they say to you that this plantation, the guy that they named it after, because believe me, it was there before him, but or it wasn't built by him, and here's how you know. The guy who it's named after was born in 1726. So now keep in mind that these modern Europeans didn't get their quote-unquote independence until 1776. Now, you know that they keep telling you that, so you know that's true, right? All right. So if he's born in 1726 and then his child and his grandchild is born in 1773 even, they didn't get their independence till 1776. And one of those grandchildren or children was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. But he was born before 1776. So him and his grandfather or father, whichever it is, these modern Europeans, not only were they born on the plantation, they were born slaves. They were born subject to the British or brutish Moors. There's absolute proof sitting right in front of you if you just get to thinking. Now, some people would say, and believe me, because we've actually told people this, and many people don't know what to think next. Why? Because they've been taught something so different. You have got to have the exorcism in order to receive the baptism of the waters of knowledge. You just have to, because you don't know where to put it because of what's already been put in your head. So, what would they say? Oh yeah, they were born there, but they were slave masters. No, they weren't even free on this land or any land until 1776, when they made their declaration. So if we could just get to thinking. So that bit of information substantiates the books that are being read about white cargo, slaves in America, and all the history that you may have gathered already. And here's the thing. You've heard people say they don't hide it. Well, guess what? They don't. It's right there in plain sight. It's just that we are not thinking. We're not taught to think. And again, I say that's why Prophet Noah Ali said, if I could just get you to thinking, you would free yourself. Islam.
Islam, indeed. Pardon me for saying it like this, but do you want to talk about the quote-unquote, the reaction of the quote-unquote house niggas? That's you saw. You made a comment to it.
Well, it goes right along with what I just said. We live in our own world, and we all do, yes. But what our problem is we live without truth. See, I understand why C.M. Bates said truth, and many others have said that truth does not change, nor does it pass away. You can live any way you want, but when you're living on a foundation that is lies, it shall crumble. It shall crumble. And that's what's happening with us. So you can have the truth and then decide what you want, But once you get truth, because it's light, you can't shut that light down. So if you truly had truth in you, the truth in you, it will shine in and without. So that's how you know someone is taking, I'm going to live the life the way I want, but they're doing it without a foundation of truth on them. So we're walking up to this plantation. We want to see, they have like tours and stuff like that, and they show you the plantation. Now these aren't the ones that's the gory stuff, like in Gettysburg and some others. They have like the gory stuff that you might not want and that's another thing about the children. You might not want your children to see, and I'm going to give you perspective on that because we ran into someone who didn't. But these Sundays, they don't have that. So we're walking up and we see this brother, and he's coming out because the tour that they have, I can see he's the tour guide. It was not. They were getting ready to have one in like a half an hour, but he must have been coming out to go to his car to get something. But he was in costume. Now he had on the knickers. Now I understand what the knickers are, and he had on the knickers. And at the time, I wasn't sure what his position he was holding at the place. So we just sort of nonchalantly said, "Oh, you're in costume." Now I want you to envision this. It's a brother. He's coming out. He's in the knickers. That's a costume. Even if it's a costume for your job, it's a costume that depicts the time era back then. And he has this on. So we were like, "Oh wow, you're in costume." Guess what, people? He got offended. He just stopped and looked and said, he said, "This is real talk." What did he say after that? He said, "I am a tour guide." Yeah. And then I wanted to say, "Yeah, and you're in costume." But I didn't. I realized he was offended, so don't say nothing. Because to him, that was his J-O-B, right? And he wanted it to be clear. But I still wanted to know this question. Even though it's his job and he is to wear that costume depicts some position during that time on the plantation. It's reenacting and depicting. So I still want to know, but I didn't ask him, what part are you playing? So we got something out of that the whole time. We were like, all right, I still want to know what part he was playing. Now some people say he was playing the part when the so-called white slave masters, after they, started doing slavery themselves, because that's all they know, and kidnapping people and all, and treating them the way they were treated, to be honest. But anyway, that when they would come up to the house, right, there's a guy who runs out with the lantern so that they can see if it was dark, that's what his costume was. I really don't know, but the point is he was so offended, as if I really still don't know his mindset. And go ahead.
This is interesting speculation because I was writing about this in Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry Part 3, where from when we went to Grandpa's funeral, the face mask, that Aboriginal face mask, and then the definition of person meaning face mask, meaning that the person, like how they say in the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say the right of the persons to keep and bear arms. So, like, if they say they charge this person with, they're taking it word magic out of the natural condition of being the people if they label you as person. But in the Bouvier's Institutes of American Law, it talks about the face mask being used in ancient Greece for in amphitheaters. Like, they would use face masks because it had a lot to do with sound, because, like, it was hard for a natural person to be heard. So when they was doing these theatrics, they would use the face mask to amplify the sound. And this is where, person lawfully and legally comes from. Like, it is not you got natural persons and artificial persons. But, like, in this instance, it reminded me of that aspect of the acting in the amphitheater, because we 2017, and my man had on slave garbs, like, and was like, that's how he got his coins. Now, I'm not mad, but I'm like, that, like, there's something in the psychology about him. And I don't know, it's like, damn, if we could have got an interview with him. Right, that's his J-O-B. He literally is living out the past. Like, because you know how you got people today who be like, well, yeah, I worked a job. And they even refer to, no matter where they work in corporate America, or corporate U.S. institutions, they'd be like, you know, I'm about to go to the plantation. You know, they refer to work as the plantation.
Right.
But this man was literally today, 2017, working on the plantation with slave garbs on. And it's like how, like, in the perspective, we still got a lot of solid facts to talk about. But is he living out a narrative that, you know, may really have him in that mind state? Like, because it's like when people take on certain positions, like, for a long time, they get used to that, like, or they summons that energy. Example, Tupac Shakur, right? Tupac Amaru Shakur was a Sapa Inca, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1500s. And then we got Tupac Shakur that we know today. You know what I mean? Tupac Amaru Shakur that we know today. Who passed in, what was that, 97? So 96. So he got executed in theory. They're saying, you know, it was the quote unquote de facto government agents who set him up. And that could very well be true. But what I'm saying is that the Tupac Amaru of historical times, he got murdered in classic Moorish battle fashion by a Spaniard. You know what I'm saying? Like, he got murdered by a Spaniard, which we know the history of the Moors and the Spaniards, or the so-called Spanish, right? And how Tupac Amaru Shakur, that we've known as an MC or lyricist, died in the same murderous fashion. And then you got people who are going to say, well, he's still alive and all of that. But I'm talking about the story. So with him taking on that appellation and that old energy, right, he took that energy on, and his life played out the same way as the appellation he took on. And what I'm asking or bringing to light, when I'm bringing to light is...
I got to interject, and that's an important statement for our people to really consider when if they are correcting their name into and choosing their appellation, to seriously think about what you are calling yourself, or what you are saying you are, or who you are saying you are by appellate, you know, by whatever you want someone to call you. And that goes across the board. Like, it's not about, and we've done this before, it's not about, you know, no liking to street nicknames either. You know, it's very serious. It's a very, very serious experience. And, you should, you know, repeat whatever that appellation is to yourself over and over again so that you can bring it forth, before you start utilizing it. But I do also, this leads into something else, because what we're talking about here is the frame of mind. Like, in other words, this guy might have felt like, oh, slavery's over, it's been over, he never knew the modern Europeans were the original slaves, and I just got a job here. And this goes hand in hand with because we experienced this also. And when I say this, a lot of you are going to say, oh, man, she's really losing her mind to say something like this. We ran into some of our close family members who, and you may know some too, and you may think of it as something's wrong with them, because they might say, I do not want my child to go to some reenactment of some slave getting whipped and being treated all badly. I do not want my child to see that. Now, many of you would say, well, they got to know the truth. They got to know the truth. You're hiding the truth from your child. They need to know where they came from. Well, if you say that, then why not show the truth about the modern Europeans who were slaves? And also, why not include in that, you know, putting the modern Europeans aside for a second, the Slavics, right? Putting them aside and their slavery journey. Why not show your children what has been done prior to the business of slavery? Why not that? You know, it's like we're saying, oh, we don't we need to know where we came from as slaves. Well, why can't we know where we came from, or as being enslaved, because we were never slaves? Why can't we know about the things greater than that, or prior to that, or why not that? So they didn't want to take their child in seeing these horrific things. Now, some people think, oh, they're just overprotecting, but actually no, because if you're not going to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, why bother? Why just give a piece of it? And that's exactly what has happened with us, a piece that is not connected properly to the truth of how this whole thing came around. Because even the prophet himself said all nations have suffered slavery because they, because they didn't
honor not the principles of their foremothers and forefathers.
For following not the principles of their foremothers and forefathers. So, right. So just think about that. That's just food for thought in reference to what your child should know. Because, at the same time, we don't want them to be oblivious. But why do we end or begin? Because I've said it before, if you really, really, really think that your whole thing started on a slave ship, that's where it ended too. So
believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And just another thing, like if you have the true history in mind, like, I would not, like me personally, I wouldn't suggest anybody just you and your children go to a plantation. I know it might feel uncomfortable if you don't have certain history, but when you know the history, like that this is our land, these pilgrims came, took it over, right? Took over the minds of the people, and through threat, duress, coercion, a lot of the same tactics that you see police use today. This is what they did from olden times. Nothing really new. They got the same, tools, handcuffs. They had shackles. They got the ankle cuffs. There's been people who've been chained to a iron pipe all night in modern day holding jails. Like, we talking 2013 and now, like, you know what I mean? And prior to, so it's like, yeah, they still got the same tools of enslavement, same tools of war, firearms, batons, all of these things. You can see that strapped to their waistline. So they're showing you in plain sight who they really, really are. But
can I add something to that at this point? Because earlier when you mentioned that when we were on that federal grant, or what they call a private military base, opened up to the public, the beach is now open up to the public, whereas before it was not. And, we've had so many people that use their nationality card, and it's respected. This will bring us to why it's important that we collectively, Moors, have been restricted from the first liberty. From liberty in its most strictest sense is the ability to move to and fro without restriction. That would be in the driver's license instrument, which is for those who are doing commerce, driving, carrying passengers and cargo and goods. So if you are an Uber driver or a taxi cab driver or whatever like that, or carrying, yes, you would need that instrument. Now, I got to say this because the only people who truly actually do what you said, still want to beat you upside the head, treat you like a slave, and really interrupt you from your liberty, are the municipalities. Can go to
translation Roman venues. But go ahead.
Let's talk about it for a minute, because it's really real, and we're saying
but
it.
Let's make sure we get back to the plantation too.
That does go back to the plantation. Yes, please do. But I'm saying that plantation. That is definitely, as you said, it's still here today. with the people in the jails today. It's still here. And the only ones who really hinder you, unless, of course, you don't know what you're talking about when you go talk to them, and that's another issue, when you interact with them, but for certain, on a massive scale, are municipalities. Municipalities, by definition, means Roman soldiers. And you've been warned about the Roman soldiers. Even the prophet told you about that, right? So with that being known, now we're telling you, listen, these municipalities, they're not government. We're bringing that out, telling you to research it and see. It's hidden in quotes in our lack of knowledge. We think that they are, but they're really the same Roman soldiers, because that's what municipality means. Look it up. This is why we were so offended when people said that the prophet created a municipality. What they're looking at is the process. They're looking at what they think is, they're not really studied into what's happening. So that's an absolute untruth. But my point is that, so if we're really going to collectively get together on our issues for liberty, for travel, not driving, traveling, we really need to recognize, instead of complaining all the time, that the only people who really hinder you from that are the municipalities and employees, because that's the only way they make finance. See, they're telling you that they're government, and they're telling you that they have authority that they do not have. And right. So while they do that, this is how they are feeding their children off of our ignorance. It really is amazing. So that's something we need to really deal with, because, like I said, we're telling you this because we've experienced it. There's many people listening who've experienced it too. They'll go to different whatevers and use their card, and they don't have a hassle, because you got to know. And that brings me to one other thing before you go back to that. I do want to, this is just an example. I had someone send me something, and they brought it out to me, and I was like, wow, this is interesting, really, really interesting. And let me just show you, because some of you are studying, but you're not studying well. The prophet said, if you think you studied and you studied well, then I would suggest you study yourself. So I'm going to just bring this out real quick. Here it is. As another example of how we do not study, but it's right now our face. They sent this to me. I was so glad they sent it. And it's in reference to identification documents, right, under the USC 1028, which is now designates 3 special non-federal identification documents and gives them preferred treatment. All right? Now, those 3 documents are the birth certificate, the driver's license, and personal identification card under 1028. However, those are special documents. Now, here's what it says. If you read it, but we don't read very well, we don't comprehend very well, guess what it says? It says here, and this is another thing I want you to think about. It says, Section 1028 of Title 18 designates 3 special non-federal identification documents and gives them preferred treatment. Listen carefully to the next line, because everybody reads this line and goes right over it. These 3 documents, in the absence of a national identity card, are the prime means by which an individual can establish his identity in the United States. Now, these 3 documents, in the absence of a national identity card, this is what the state will recognize. Well, guess what? The state is never going to give you a national identification card because they're not a national domicile. So it says, these 3 documents in the absence of a national identity card. But you have a national identity card. So therefore, this birth certificate, driver's license, and any other thing that they are accepting from, that the state says they'll accept, does not apply to you. I just wanted to bring that out because we really don't study the subject matter of what we're right. Definitely not under national principles. We may study under something else, under municipality, under corporations, come up out of that, wake up out of that, and walk into the national principles. All right, go back to what you were saying, because I said that. Let me just tell you why I said that. Because the municipalities, which we know is identified as the Roman soldiers, here's what happens. They know that you don't know this. They know that you don't know this. They take total advantage of the lack of knowledge. And it's been written. We suffer for the lack of knowledge, period. So they still have us in slavery, but it's in a different manner. Or it's an enslavement of the mind, really. And that's why the prophet said, I come to take you out of your mental slavery. I've come to teach you to be yourself. I yield.
Indeed. So going back to the experience, though, do you remember when we was coming into the plantation, they had that sign that claimed something about a colonial road?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be gentle on it, because
But that also correlates to our experience. We was in a spot where, like, the streets tell a story. You know, whenever you're looking at those old streets with cobblestones laid out perfect, you know, and then you see that they try to just put cheap tar over top of it, but the cobblestones still are popping up. You know, that shows you that we made ways way before these pilgrims did, and that you know, those ancient roadways are actually ours. But just real quick, I wanted to share something from some literature we got while we was down there, and this was from the plantation. Now, mind you, European lady, while we was there, we have the footage where she's saying that the original people are not Indians. Nonetheless, they had a book in there called Indians in the 17th Century Virginia, right? And like I said, you know, big acknowledgement to everyone who's been listening to MHHS Eyes Wide Open Blog Talk Radio, because a while ago I had put that in the atmosphere. I said, look, I need some information on the Queen of Appomattox. Or can you say the original appellation again? Pardon me.
Appomattox.
Right. It was a very decisive battle that had happened there. I got to go back and do that history. And to be honest, like, I want to share so much, but then it's also like it's so much homework to do at the same time, you know, because it's like all of this we just had our caps blown back. But, you know, it's not anything we didn't know. It was just a great experience, but there's still so much more to learn. But I wanted to take an excerpt from this book, page 44. Now, mind you, the woman is on camera saying that, you know, the original people were not Indians, period. But in this book, page 44, it says the quote-unquote Virginia Indians had begun to develop some art appreciation before the coming of the so-called whites. Like, before the pilgrims got here, you know, like we was already doing the writing on the walls, had stone cubes buried in the earth, all of these things. And it says that, and it is manifested in several ways. We find references in the early literature to the images of their kings and devils placed in the chief holy house near Utamusa at Pamunkey. It says these images were crudely carved and painted black. And now, we know we're not Negro black in color, but get the point. You know what I mean? And it says, and decorated with chains of copper, pearls, and beads. So, you know, Force had the wall art going down there. They're telling you by description who these people were. You know what I mean? And we know we're not Negro black in color, but when they're painting that dark, they're letting you know something. You know what I mean? And yet that's still color, but it's imagery to let you know something. So it's telling you right in this book what the original people of the area look like. So the so-called Negro black in color being Moors in fact, or so-called blackamoors, etc., you know, these are the original people of America, but black is the implication. And it's funny too because when when dude came out of the plantation house with the slave garb on and like really got offended, all I could think of was the Jay-Z song Story of OJ, because I'm like, yo, this is real time 2017. We here on the plantation, and this dude is living that out, like for coins. You know what I mean? Like he's living that out for coins. Also, I wanted to say from this trip, I remember we was talking about it, and we mentioned it before, that so-called Virginia, or if you take it, the only way you can see it, you know, publicly, like, is by train. So we captured the pyramid on camera in so-called Virginia. I got a piece of it. I was trying to record for like 22 minutes straight because I knew it was coming up, and I just got tired, and as soon as I put it down, the camera down, here came the pyramid. So I got a piece of it, a very good piece of it, but not the whole view like I wanted to. But nonetheless, for those who would never take that route, we might be talking to people on the West Coast somewhere. We do have the evidence that, you know, there's a small pyramid in Virginia, but it's not the only one. They have a place down in Richmond called Hollywood Cemetery that has one. We picked that book up too, Hollywood Cemetery, and it's some interesting history about it, because a lot of people wonder, like, well, how did they capstone, you know, these pyramids? Like, and it was a specific story in this book, Hollywood Cemetery, about someone who was locked up, but they were a sailor. They were a sailor in jail, and they wanted to build this pyramid in the cemetery. And they got the pyramid. It's only like 90 feet high, but nonetheless, it is a solid pyramid. I don't think this one was built with brick and mortar. It's all stone. But nonetheless, they got it like about 90 feet high, and they tried to use a crane to capstone it, and they couldn't capstone it. It just didn't work. So the sailor heard I think it was some Confederates or a governor. Pardon me, like I said, Joe, it's a lot of history to take in. But nonetheless, it was like one of those, you know what I mean? It was definitely somebody of the Pilgrim stock who had put a call out for help to get this pyramid on, I believe, you know what I mean? And the fact of the matter is, the sailor who was locked up, he heard about that, and he was like, yo, I could get that capstone on. I could definitely get that capstone on. So they gave him a shot to get it on, right? Because they were trying to use a crane, and it wouldn't reach. So he gets up there. He's like, "This is how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna wet the pulleys so that, you know, they'll stretch a little bit more." So he got up there. They wet the pulleys, and he was able to cap the pyramid. And because of that, they reduced his sentence. They let him go. They was like, "Well, you know, since you put in that type of work, we're cutting the rest of your sentence. You're now a free man," based off of his masonry work. So, in his intelligence, and I'm pretty sure if we dig deeper, that was more than likely a Moor. I just get that feeling, you know, the ships, the all of that. I just get that feel. But nonetheless, these monuments do exist in North America. You know, pyramids, etc., mounds, etc. And these were all built by our people, Moors, Aboriginals. So I find that interesting. Like I said, I had to just take one to the head real quick, because with putting that you know, call out for this information, it's like they say, seeking you shall find, but you find things when you least expect it. It was like one of those experiences. So I'll just read this, and then I'm going to yield the floor about the Appomattox. It says, Appomattox chief village. Now, because remember I was asking about the queen of Appomattox, or so-called Appomattox, and when I was like, it just isn't time. It isn't time. If I can't find nothing, you can't Google any information like that. You know what I mean? It's very scarce to find that. And it came just magnetized, and it's just time. So not even like 5 pages in, on page 3 of the book, this is when I knew I had like, it's a lot, it's a lot of information to take in. Because I get to page 3 of the book, and it's like Appomattox chief village of King Koquanasam was located until 1623 on Swift Creek, a tributary of the Appomattox Appomattox River, about a mile above its mouth. Appomattox Smith or Matika Tyndall was the chief village of Queen Apus or Queen Nuski. Like her appellation is like damn near long as the alphabet. This is how long her appellation is. And she was the sister of King Koquanasam. So it was a brother and sister who co-ruled this area like Moors are supposed to do, family is supposed to do. They co-ruled together. Now my thing is this, the important part of history is to understand, there's just so much. One of the important parts of history is to understand when pilgrims are telling it from their perspective, and then, you know, what Moors saw themselves as, because honestly, we didn't use king and queen titles like we use sheik or chief or sachem, you know, Ali, things of that nature. So just like Metacomet from the northeastern section or the mid-Atlantic region of the continental North America was called King Philip by the Europeans, and his brother was called King Alexander. You know that they saw themselves as just simply sheiks or sachems. Not to downgrade that. Excuse me, that's not a downgrade. I'm just saying that they didn't use the same jurisdiction or the right word or the same words as the pilgrims did to identify themselves. So the pilgrims would say things amongst themselves, like.
But they're English titles.
They're English titles.
Right. They're English titles, the king and the queen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, to just immediately have to absorb all of that history that I had a question mark on my mind for over like a year and a half, 2 years, to be able to receive that now is just an honor, and I'm thankful to have had that experience, you know, with you among many others, because we didn't really even scratch the surface yet of everything that we went through. But I'll say this, it's just so interesting. You know, me and Hamatite was having this conversation earlier as well, that with the European signing the Declaration of Independence being born on the plantation, right? And the time frame pre-Declaration of Independence, you have to simply understand they were slaves, like, and you know, it's likened to the fact that sometimes people think that the quote-unquote slave master on the plantation is you know, he's running everything, and that's not necessarily true. Like, he's a worker too. They were a slave. They were slaves. They are the original slaves, Slavics. Even those Moors who did get enslaved, like the person who was, you know, that whoever the master was of the house, because remind you, it was Moors and Europeans who was practicing enslavement, right? Because they say the first recorded, you know, slave owner in so-called Virginia was a Moor. Or, you know, it's many different ways to look at that, because if you're talking about the word black in 1621, then, you know, that specifically applied to pilgrims. But then, you know, if you look at it today, it's like, I don't know. It's crazy. It is a gray area in certain.
It's a flipping of the script because they're the original.
It's the flip of the script.
Right, Negroes. They are. So now that they usurp the position, so now they call us that, but it's really them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to really look at it, like, I know we're not Negroes, blacks, and colors, but the so-called pilgrim head of house or whatnot, they were actually the real niggas. Like they were not running things or in a much more better position than whoever was in the field or in the house. Because it's like this: if you work at a quote unquote job today, right, you might just be a regular employee, just something simple as a sales associate. But you have a manager. But then the manager has a general manager. And then they have CEOs, you know what I mean? All of these people who are at the top. Even though they never clock in and work with you like that, a general manager might appear and work with y'all from time to time, but like, the dude who's writing your checks, they're not really clocking in with you every day. So if, like, say, for example, Django, Candy, right, Calvin Candy, the question is, he was born on the plantation. I mean, he was, quote, unquote, the slave master, but then when you really look at it from multiple angles, was he? Because the Stephen was the one who was really running things. You know what I mean? He was really running everything in the background. He was the one who was writing the checks and putting the European on with intuition about who knew who and what was what. They didn't have that sense. But I'm saying that for in real history, that 1773, if a European was born on a plantation, that they were not born free. Like, it is a big question to really consider. Because, like, if they had to respond, if they had to report to the quote-unquote King of England, then that means that they were not supreme. They were not supreme. They had to check in with somebody else. Like, and this is no disrespect, but, like, whatever they made, they had to, report to the king. They were subject to the Emperor of Morocco. They had to pay regularly advised marks. So much likened to today, like, you got different forms of taxes that cannot be imposed without consent. Bottom line, like all of that is constitutional. If you look at even the Declaration of Independence, it tell you right in there, that nobody, it has to be, all quote unquote governments derive their just authority from the consent of the governed. But then you can look even deeper and that they're not even, that branch is not even sanctioned in constitutional government. So this is a different agency. But nonetheless, it shows a very important part that the people who was running the house in the 1700s, 1600s, they were just managing it for the British Moors, the ancient Britons. You understand? And the Emperor of Morocco, those were Moors. So the Moors had, them paying regularly advised marks on both sides, so they couldn't make any pecuniary gains at that time without having to pay tribute to the king. And another thing is that it's interesting, when you look at the history of how all of these things, the history of the ancient Britons or Moors relative to these Europeans, how a lot of this helped shape or form the Constitution. Because you got to remember, the Constitution, as much of a beautiful document that it is, it was inspired or formed from pressure of very atrocious happenings. You know what I mean? Like, it was a lot of ills, which is why the document had to be written out. So from all of these different ills, something beautiful was made for the protection of the people, right? So now, look at this, right? Because talk about the king. remember they had the stamp acts and all of those things, the stamp taxes and all of that. Pre-Constitution, it was like if some British troops liked your car, you know what I'm saying, or whatever you was in, or liked your garments, they'd be like, oh, I like that jacket. They would arbitrarily search you. You know what I'm saying? They would write up, quote unquote, writs of assistance. And those writs of assistance were super arbitrary because they would just on the spot write these things up like they had the authority to search and seize what they wanted. So, like, in the name of, they do that now, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that very practice is where the Fourth Amendment protection was inspired from. You got to remember, not that that's not just, because that is just common sense, but it was a lot of atrocious things that was happening that formed that. So like you said, they do that now. So back then it was like, well, our reason for wanting to check your house and your barn is to make sure that you got the king stamps. You know what I mean? So arbitrarily, like, it was like those were the stamps that had to be in, you know, people's household, those who were subject to them anyway. You know what I mean? That's how they were on it. So they'd be like, oh, well, you know, I like your maroon leather jacket. I want to know what's in the top pockets. You're supposed to have the king stamps on you. And they would just write it up, you know what I'm saying, and basically arbitrarily give themselves the authority to just, you know what I mean, do highwayman type of activity, you know what I'm saying? And from that, and those writs that they wrote up were much like traffic tickets today, where, like, you know, it's on spot but arbitrary. And they were called writs of assistance. And all of this had a lot to do with the ancient Britons or Moors, you know, and Europeans, which is why I will also always say it's imperative to make sure you study that book, Ancient and Modern Britons, to get a real a good historical account of what happened, you know, what the Moors' history all over the world, and how a lot of different nationalities, basically the actions of these different nationalities interfacing with each other had to have some written rules, because they was like, nah, you're not about to come over here practicing the savagery on us. Like, you know, they want to break chicken eggs to see if other stamps was hidden in them and all of these things. And they like, nah, this is not going down. So like I said, it was a series of atrocious events that led up to a super important document, the Constitution. And I just, that whole experience, I mean, we went some other places. I want to talk about it, but it's that the other places is more so to show you all. We definitely have some of these things recorded, and we'll be doing a documentary on that. I got some things already in the works, so there'll be some on YouTube, but you definitely, Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry Part 3 is being worked on along with the DVD, you know what I mean, to actually, so once this is edited up right and things of that nature, and mind you, I promise you, and whatever we don't touch on tonight, we're definitely going to touch on more of this subject on Sons of Allah this Thursday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But like I said, I'm just thankful for you all, you know, or everybody on the line. I'm to the point now where I feel like, you know, 4 years, you know, we've been doing this. I'm thankful we're still going to do this. But it's just very inspiring, and now we have different lanes to show you, because it's like we've been coming across historical things like this for a long time, and, you know, we try to talk about them, but now we can actually give you the visual of these things, and I'm thankful for that, you know, and the fact we here, we still doing it. I'm comfortable with the fact that I can live and teach off of my personal experience, even though it's not done. You know, my personal experience is not, you know, I feel like I'm just getting started on a new chapter in life, but I'm comfortable with teaching from what I know specifically. Not, and I don't want to make that come off wrong, but like at this point, there's still enough information for me to learn for another 4 years and teach. You feel what I'm saying, man? Like we just absorb so much information that, you know, in trying to absorb all of these books, all of these things, is definitely something to look forward to. So please just definitely stay in tune with the platforms, MHHS Eyes Wide Open, Keeneland Moore's RV Bay Publications, Mantis Views 29. If you have not subscribed, do that and click the bell because we definitely about to come through with some more classics. That's a fact. So outside of that, is there anything else you want to touch on? Yeah, because we didn't touch on everything, but if you want to specifically touch on anything else, we can do that.
I think we have covered enough for now anyway, but there is a lot, and it'll be more specified in the documentary that you do, the visual and the book. So it is just a wonderful experience all the way around. And we, like I said, you recognize that unless you're studying, you will miss everything because we have we've been indoctrinated to believe, and we've been indoctrinated to believe that this is that we weren't here and that this is, you know, modern European government, and, you know, even though around us it's crumbling, showing us that it's not, and also that, you know, just on any study you see that it's not, and then you realize what's really happening. But for those who do not recognize that, who do not know that, you know, their road will be, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to guesstimate what's going to happen because everybody has their narrow road to travel, and that's what they're going to do. But for those who are interested in getting the truth and passing it on, because the only way to pass it to the generations, you know, the prophets, they get this into the children at all costs, and the only way to do that is to know it so that you can. And, you know, we're going to do our part. We are doing our part in that. So it's 11:30 now. I don't know if Anna Ede is there, or someone may have some questions because we've jumped some stuff out. But I was really what?
I'm here.
I yes.
My fault.
Yeah, go ahead.
Say what you was going to say, and then I want to say this as well too, because it was something else significant about the day when we was at the fort. But go ahead. Say what you was going to say.
I was just going to reiterate again, just tap up that, you know, you have, in order to gain the wisdom that you seek, you will not obtain it from anyone else. The only way that wisdom is obtained is to apply what you know. Now, that's a serious formula because someone can tell you and tell you and tell you, but trust me, you don't know. And then that brings you to why the prophet said man does not know by being told. It doesn't mean that we can't tell, but that you can't tell someone else. But then you're really not going to know until you experience it, know for yourself, and if you're really, really seeking wisdom, it is only obtained by applying what you know, by applying what you know, not just saying, oh, I know, oh, yeah, I know, oh, yeah, I know. If you do not apply what you know, you will never gain wisdom. So saying that is you got to know. And then that goes right back to the research and the study and the experience. So, you know, I just found it interesting, especially when we were at, you know, when we were at the so-called military base, although they made it public. They didn't give you any hassle. In fact, they charge a small cover charge just to what they call keep out. That's what they call it. It's really called keeping protocol to an extent. And then once you're inside it, they don't hassle you. Nobody bothers you. You can have fun. You're at the beach. You have the food, the bar, whatever you want to do. The fort, the board. This is like not really a boardwalk. You just walk from the beach down to where the fort and the Battery Church is, and and that's just one experience. But my main thing is that you can't know what you can do until you apply it. But you also, I guess the statement that the prophet says that you must do so in an intelligent tone, and a lot of us do not, because and the reason why we do not is because we're just not really sure yet. We're at this. We've got this emotional thing about us, and we got this emotional thing about us because we're all mad because we were slaves and look what they did. And now you're finding out that that is not the truth. That's not really how it went down. So that's right. It's got to change now. It has got to change. So go ahead.
But check it out. Going back to the story of Hans L. and Gret L., right? Yeah. The same day we was there, because I don't know, I mean, for those who saw the video I put up when I was speaking with you, I was telling you in that video, and I wasn't playing, and I wasn't trying to sound arrogant, but I said, look, I feel like I'm a part of an Astro dynasty because of all of the people who are born on the same day, how, we got so many attributes of astrology in our born days, like literally born 180 degrees apart and things like that. But the orange moon, right?
Oh, gosh.
Full moon in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Full moon in Capricorn.
All right, we got to add this, and then we're going to go to callers, okay? Because it's been like 2 hours, and we have. All right. First of all, I just got to say this, man. I've always loved the song by Erykah Badu called "The Orange Moon Reflecting the Sun, the Light of the Sun." All right, that's a perfect.
Know that.
Soon as we're leaving off the beach. Soon as we're leaving off the beach, time to go home. Time to leave.
Dealing with the ocean, right?
Yep. Oh my God, right? Because the ocean's right there.
Yeah.
Man. We look and we're at the perfect timing for the perfect 180 reflection of the sun and the moon. The sun is setting and the moon is rising. And it was at the perfect coordinate for it to have a perfect full reflection. And that's what the orange moon. Oh, it was beautiful. Just beautiful. Yes.
The moon was orange as a Reese cup wrapper, like, and we watched it fade. It only took about 15 minutes for it to fade away.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it was a divine sign of being in the right place at the right time, because we couldn't even see it from the other part of the beach we was on. We didn't even see it. You know what I mean? But
and you're right. We sat there. We was leaving, but we sat there trying to take pictures and talk about this until we saw it fade away, because everything is constantly moving in degree. A degree is of movement, or a degree is of knowledge, for depending on where you place that at. But we actually saw it fade away and turn, because it was moving. The sun in coordination with the moon. One was setting and the other was rising. It was perfect balance. And then we watched it as it turned, the orange went away. It was really a wonderful experience. And it was a full moon.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful. Yeah. Of course.
And family, we just scratching the surface of what we've, this is just crazy. But,
all right.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about it more. This Thursday on the Sins of Allah as well. But yeah, if there's anybody who wants to question, comment, add on.
I don't know. And each there with the
Yes, we have Actually, we have two people who've had their hands up, but
All
I
right.
want to just let everyone listening know that if you have a question, comment, concern, press 1 on your telephone dial. We'll take the calls in the order that we receive them. So now let's see. Our first caller is caller 570790. You're live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwestern Exum. Islam. Caller 570790. Are you there?
It might not be
Alrighty.
there.
Caller 972-839. You are live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwestern Exum. Caller 972-839.
Islam.
Oh, there we go.
Islam.
Islam. Brother Shakur.
Indeed, man. This is Abdul Malik Sabir Shakur Bay. I'm calling from Northwestern Mexico, the Texas Republic territory. Once again, family, it is good to be in the house. Shout out to Nadia, you, man, and you know what? You know how you know names, they come and fly and they go. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, because I see y'all down in the video. Islam family. Man, that's what you prologuing on, and you breaking it down for the people because it's the old ancient fable of Hansel and Gretel. There's some question I would ask, and if the public, us Moors and Moabites who are on the line and are listening, but please don't hush up, because you're not selling up. And on this show, when they say anyone has anything to say or add to it, please speak up. Where does the story Hansel and Gretel come from? Are Hansel and Gretel twins?
Yes. They were brothers and sisters.
Yeah, they were brothers and sisters. Yeah.
They may have been twins. I don't remember, from a childhood, they may have been twins, but they represented the male and female. The daughter was the mother and son, actually.
And and the reason I'm asking these questions because I know everything going to be on the line tonight. We are from our Moabites, our mother, we are put in position when Allah put us in position to be here. And when we taught these Europeans how to get off their knees and hands and crawling around, and the knowledge that we taught them and they possessed that knowledge, and then after we continue doing our, I say job, but instruction from Allah, Almighty God, to what? Uplift fallen humanity and to raise up and name and create. But yet our ancestors, I guess that's the way I look at it, and I always wonder, and I know all Moors and Moabites always wonder, how in the world did we get ourselves in this state? But the Second Quran explains it to us, because we honor not the principles of our forefathers and our foremothers.
Mm-hmm.
And when, with the help of some dirty Moors, with the knowledge, help them, assist them, and think that when we see them that they were neck to neck and eye to eye, that they were God, but yet all the time when they sold us out, they also put the noose around their necks also, because now look at them. The Jesse Jackson, the Al Sharpton, all of them are as ground one. That's zero. These souls was gotten, taken, stolen, and transformed into an ideology in the language for, first of all, the grown-ups, meaning the adults. Then they studied, and they transformed it into fables for our youth to keep them what? In bondage. It is the Moabites. From her came our existence of life, because Allah was the structure of what was to take place in accordance and following rules and guidelines of her regulations. Because, why I say her regulations? Because there's no birth nowhere on this plane without first coming from the female, which is the mother, the womb, the open, the outer space. And we come into a space, a plane to existence. Now here we are. And you're breaking it down, and I love that. And I listen to everything that Miz had to say and everything that Mother and Anna L. and Roz Mariah had to state, because it's true and it's fact. These lessons that are being broke down tonight are that which your foremothers and forefathers from many years until this very day, 2017, are still trying to instill into the children, the babes, even the adults that who have lost their way and need to find a way to get back on the way. Because you are Moors and you're nothing else. You are who your foremothers and forefathers were, which you are today. And these lessons that are being broke down, example, Hansel and Gretel, have been broken down to let those know, instead of following the European fable or fairy tale that has been portrayed in our lives as, I want to grow up and have that instilled in me, which that is already instilled in you, inside of you, but has been stolen, transmuted, and decoded and sent back to you to make a different outcome of who you really are. So here we are today. And you all at RV Bay Publication continue to break these lessons, these fables down to the people and let them know where they come from. Use your mind. And if you don't know, if it can't, you feel a block at somebody, that you will be able to get the key to unlock the door, that you will see, and Allah will fill in all blank. It's long, family. I relieve the flow.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you very much.
All right. Yes. All right. Our next caller 609-541. You're live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwest Nixon.
Islam family. This is Taisha German Bay, calling from the territory of New Jersey. I just want to thank y'all. Every day, every time I talk to y'all, I'm just overwhelmed with the knowledge that you guys drop. So I'm glad you guys went down to Virginia. This whole white cargo, the white slaves, that has just been mind-blowing, to say the least. But listening to knowing your own family's history in the now, while we're in the present, due to mental slavery, it is crazy how our minds work. I have a 103-year-old great grandmother. I went to go visit her the other day, and ironically enough, the spirit's working, ancestors working. My cousin calls me from New York. She's been doing the history on my grandmother's side of the family, which is my father's family. Now she's traced back, and she was only able to go back but so far. So ironically enough, while I'm there, I'm talking to her, and she's asking me to give video of my great grandmother. So I'm basically just trying to ask my grandmother, family history, family stories. And her response to me is, well, why would I want to tell you that? What story, do you want to hear? And to me, that kind of like is hurtful, because it's like, okay, I'm trying to find out information while you're still here. But, I guess because of the mental trauma she may have went through, she's not willing to divulge, more into it. So when you say, looking into this, your family history while in the present is so important for us now, because it'll lead us back to our foremothers and our forefathers. So just listening to y'all and the history, that you guys see, just around everywhere. We're everywhere. The Moors have just, you'll see us in the buildings everywhere. But like you said, if you're not conscious of it, you won't notice these things. So I'm glad that you touched on the topic of basically, knowing your family's history in the present, so we can get further back into knowing the history of our forefathers and foremothers. And also, it's so ironic that you guys seen the orange moon, because me and Kashawn was out that very same moment, and we seen the orange moon as well. So, yeah. So, when I listen to you guys and y'all, I've been in the science now for a year, not even a year. And every day is like a mind-blowing experience. Every day. And I just want to thank the fam. I appreciate y'all. Please continue doing what y'all doing to encourage other of us to stay active, because it's all about uplifting fallen humanity. I yield the floor, Islam.
Islam, and thank you.
All right.
I just want to interject something here. I'm hearing what she's saying also, in that, she's trying to ask questions. Now, we also went through a social engineering and the effect of it. We were and are really noble people with I'm going to use the word class. I'm just going to use it because class is not something you can go and obtain. You're born with it or you're not. No, we are the mothers and fathers of civilization and civilization principles. And as a result of this whole thing happening and the mental enslavement, you know, and the social engineering, we've taken on reasons to not, or in our mind, which is what she's saying, because I kind of experienced something similar myself while I was on this trip. It was very personal to the family thing. You know, we've taken on this thing of not mentioning certain things because it's hush hush or or the hush hush tree or something like that. You know, and we ought not have done that, but a lot of us do. And the crazy part, and I don't think this applies to what she's saying, but the crazy part is that it is based on such a false thing or such a mental situation that doesn't belong to us, you know? Like you're supposed to act like this or be like that. No, what you're supposed to simply do and be is be civilized, and that is what has been missing is principles of civilization, period. But as it comes to family stuff, you know, you have that's a family secret, or no, we need to learn from our family members, their experiences, and, you know, be complete with that. You know, we really do, but we you know, certain things we just won't talk about, so it never gets passed down. And I think that's part of what is being said is that, you know, I want to find out more. And I know that my son is, you documented a lot of stuff from my father before he passed just by talking with him. So really should write that stuff down and really should pass it down.
And from those conversations, it opened up a whole nother understanding of the history down there that I get now. I really get it now, because you used to talk about Miss Gooch. You would always tell me about Miss Gooch. And I'm like, Gooch. So when we down there going towards the funeral, I see this sign named Goochland County. Now, mind you, those who rewind back, if you go back and watch the video on Mentis Views 29 when we was in the museum, when they was talking about fixing a perpetual brand, that quote was from William Gooch, who was a governor of Virginia. So certain people got branded. It's just crazy. Like, it's just so much. I don't look, man. My fault.
All right.
Like, I don't know. Like, there's certain things I would have to have your permission to speak on, but we're not going to do that now.
Yeah. I'm still absorbing that little family thing myself, so no, I don't want to discuss that. I'll put it in a book, maybe, and change the name.
That's what I'm saying.
Now listen, I always say this. I say I'll change the name to protect the guilty. So that's how I do it. So because that situation is many of other family members out there listening who have the same exact experience, but they're not going to, you know, say anything about it. And, you know, so you put it in a book and give them something to absorb. They can't argue with the book. They can only reflect with themselves on a real talk.
And another thing I learned from trying to get information from the elders that are still alive now is, like, you have to really listen. Like, not for nothing. I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying that, if you ask a question, like, just get them, take them. You got to ask a question that's going to take them back and get them talking to the point where all you got to do is listen and ask questions based off of what they're telling you. So, like, you talk to somebody who was born in the 30s, 40s, ask them what it was like when, you know, what was the radio like back then? Did the radio cut off? Where did you store food before the refrigerators? Do you remember traffic lights? Was it dirt road? Like, just small things like that will lead to bigger conversations, from my experience. You know what I mean? just listen. You might not get to ask the question you want to ask, but I know in some cases that if you just listen to whatever it is they're saying, and you got your clear sentience, you got your clear audio on, like you're gonna get the answers you want anyway, and or through absorbing whatever it is they're saying, things will happen on your path that are going to be an nemesis for you or reminders for you. Like I'm telling you, I mean, from my experience, that's what I experienced. So, like, even with the Goochland thing, and the William Gooch revelation later, it's like, oh, wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, really. And he was a slave owner. And, okay, and it just, certain things you're going to have to put the puzzle together on, and it'll make a lot more sense, you know? But, yeah, it's saddening with that generational gap. Like, the elders are like, you know, these youngins are crazy. And then you know, they're not giving up the information. And
exactly.
And
well, I always say the problem with the children is the problem with the parents. So we'll figure that out. Everyone will figure that out later, because remember, there's our duty to support and all of that. Chapter 23, Mr. 7, Holy Quran. Yep. Yeah. All right, let's see if there's any more callers, because it's almost.
Yes, there is. Let's see. We got one more caller. Let me see. Make sure. Yes, caller 443-376. You're live on the air. Please state your affiliation at Northwest Maxim.
Peaceful greetings, family. I am Hassan Ghazi Obey at Northwest Maxim. How's my family?
All right. How are you?
Doing good. Doing really good. Hey, bro. I'm doing really, really good. I just at first I was just going to say, you know, excellent broadcast and leave it at that. But when Mother Taisa had called in and had spoke about asking family for information, I think I had put on the record probably at the end of 2014 on a broadcast, and I spoke briefly with my patrilineal grandmother, and I had, you know, asked her a few questions. She's fairly young, though. She's still in her early 70s, and I'm saying fairly young because that technically is young for us when you really check how long we actually would be on the planet. So, yeah, but she had a wealth of information of different European, you know, last names, of course, at the moment. But it actually was pretty beneficial, and I think around that time, too, when I had mentioned European last names, I think Mother Anita had also told me, you know, when you really check those last names, you know, the European really has nothing to offer, so to speak, as far as our Albion sons and daughters,
That's
as
right.
far as the quote-unquote naming. So what I realized is, you know, on a positive side of that, when there is an ascendant, you know, ancestor before us or a grandparent before us, they have some type of information. What you'll actually like kind of find out is that, like, for my situation, both my matrilineal and patrilineal side are both from the area that was recognized to be inhabited mostly by the part of our family that went by the Nanticoke, so near that Accomack County Corporation part of Virginia Republic, so to speak. So when finding that out, I was able to trace back, you know, when people, you know, say they may hear stories about, you know, Christopher Newport or Chris Martin, and actually those were the, when I was tracing, those were the people that actually married into my family, the mothers, so to speak. Like, they were the ones grasping the mothers of my family, even to the point where my great-grandmother on my matrilineal side actually carried the quote-unquote maiden name Martin. And we were able to kind of trace things back to, like, 1602. And this was about a little over 2, almost 3 years ago. But one thing I really did find out in finding all of that out, because you know, one thing you could kind of feel special, but when you humble yourself, you really realize that's all our family, and that's just one section of our family that, you know, it's like, so when we find out anything from any ancestor, 9 times out of 10, what we're also going to find out is really how we're all connected. So I just wanted to kind of put that on the record to give a kind of some light and hope and the more we all individually as a family across the planet come up with different histories from our immediate family members, we'll be able to connect the dots. So, but other than that, it's an excellent broadcast, and I enjoy the family every week. So thank you for your activity. I love you, family. Islam, peace and love.
Thank you, Islam. It's interesting. What was coming to my mind when mentioning about, the quote-unquote European names, it is correct that they're really the ones who never really had names, period. So we don't need to be tripping about that. Like, the most surprising one for me was what they think is Irish, which is like McIntosh or McIntyre. Those are all Moorish appellations, quite frankly. Now that's just as surprising as finding out that modern Europeans are the original slaves, but Slavics. But it is true. So when the prophet says give back the name, he said Christian. He said give back Christianity. We have to understand the difference between that, and what that really means is there's no title on it. So this is why, we were telling people, look, if you just want to keep what you already, what is known as, what is really your nom de guerre, that many call a straw name, that others call a slave name, and some people call a fiction name or whatever like that. The real deal is the title. So this is why we tell people you can use that, because they don't belong to modern Europeans either. They really, really, really don't. It's the lack of the title that causes those to be names in the first place, which are tags, are not pre-national appellations. They're not. And they're tags, and not only are they tags, they're Christian tags. I remember someone calling me and saying, I looked up what a name is, and they were giving me some definition. I said, you didn't look it up in the law dictionary. And I looked it up, and I texted to them, and they were blown away, because they were looking it up in probably, I don't really recall, but some altered or abridged, meaning that was given, instead of seeing that it clearly says it's a Christian tag. Not to get that confused with being Christ-like, crystal clear and pure I'm talking about. That's what it is. And so not having the title is the problem. Now, here's the issue. You're not going to find the titles unless they're on the women, because this is a matriarch. So one of the things they did is they, I'm saying you're not going to find it in the records unless, they're in the land records deep down in the vaults. So one of the things they did was began doing what is known as the patriarch, and having women take on the patrilineal, as you say, name. Well, if you were able to dig to the 1600s on your matrilineal side, if you were, because that's the most difficult thing to do, because women started taking on the last quote-unquote name, housebinder, the husband. And the interesting part there, it wasn't the ill or a they on that either. So it was engineered to be so that as we speak today, it was hard to go back to your mother, which is the source, which is the matriarch. And so it's a lot of people today that are in that same position. You'll ask them, well, what's your nationality or whatever, and they could be modern Europeans, doesn't matter. They'll start talking about who their father was. No disrespect to the father. This immediately causes us to lose track of, maternity and matriarchal principles, which is in nature. It was designed to do so, absolutely designed to do so. So, if you could go back that far, but the records are kind of lost, because people have been taking on, the husband's name, and I say this also because at this point in this information, we have something that needs to be really cleared up, really, really cleared up, and that is we have modern European women and sons who, well, I'm a Moor, and I'm like, look, all you got to do is go trace your mother. It will not fail if you can do so. A lot of them can do so. You trace your mother and what she was. And the equation is unfailing. It's unfailing now. Whatever your mother is, that's what you are. This is why it is supported in nature's law. It's supported in national and international law and maxim. And when we went down to the African American Museum, it was right on the wall. And the new one that they put together. What the condition of the child is based on the mother. No disrespect to the son, but that's the way it goes because everyone came out of a mother. And, you'll say, well, where did you come out of a mother? Then you'll ask the woman, well, where did you come from? Or we'll say the womb. And then you say, well, where did you come from? The womb. Because that's the source. Period. Absolutely and period. That's it, which is why the terminologies son of a widow and or living widow, etc., like that. So as we're doing our tracing, don't let them misdirect you into DNA testing and blood testing. The only one, the blood is the blood. It doesn't matter what the, what degree or factor it is, unless it's got the RH factor, which is proof positive of the experiments with the Rhesus or with the Arabo-Yavero chimpanzee, also referred to as the Rhesus monkey, etc. That's a factor in the blood. So it's important that the sisters, that we all do the search on our mother's side. No one does that. They always search on their father's side. And the father could have had a child with a modern European, and that just killed the lineage right there. It just kills it because it's not about that. It's about the matriarchal side, the maternal side. So you could go back to the 1600s. That was pretty interesting.
And it's funny you say that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you said that, and you specifically mentioned the word McIntyre.
Yeah.
And when we was having a discussion with those brothers in the shop, he's out of all appellations, he mentioned that one. But in Ancient and Modern Brit Times, Volume 1, they mentioned McIntyre, and things like that, and how they was Moorish appellations. And I think McIntyre was like the son of a carpenter or something like that. Well, I promise you, we're going to put it together, and in the documentary, it's going to be there. So,
and I will say this, and we'll go to the next call of this one. I will say this, that we didn't mention, that's in addition, is we forgot to even mention about the foot traffic, just the GP stuff, going into the local barbershop. Man, we went into a local barbershop down there at Shop. We didn't even talk about that. Or how about when we're walking and we're asking people, oh, do you know, we asked this the general question.
Don't give away too much. Don't give up too much.
But the answer, I won't. But the answers that the general people walking gave will blow your mind, because here's what it is. Everybody knows, except those who need to know. But now those who need to know are beginning to know. So what we have to do is start being that of which we know and being who we are. And, not just waiting for someone to ask you as if it's an interview, but be that at all times. Come to teach you to be yourself. It's going to roll right off of our lips, not in anger, not in emotion, but in matter of fact. Islam. All right. Is there any more callers?
Well, we have no more callers, so it's 7 after midnight. So if you want to, we can close out this broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think that will work very well.
Fine. Everyone, make sure this and check out Sons of Allah this Thursday, 9 o'clock. I'm sure Ms. will be picking up and giving some more information.
That is a fact.
Right. So
we're
going
right
got
back
a full
in.
week.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a full week. We got Principles of Nationality in action tonight. We got Moor's Heritage and History School tomorrow. And we have Sons of Allah And, of course, we had Sister Standing on Law this past Sunday. So if you missed it, go into the archives and listen to it. It's a great broadcast, great information, as always. So with that, thank you all for listening, for joining, for participating. Peace and love, and we will see you on tomorrow.
7:30.
7:30.
Peace and love. All right.
Peace. Our problem is lack of knowledge and the intended deceit and trickery done, because even those who read the bibliotext that you call the Bible says he shall fool even the most believe. So even those who think they're highly educated and this and that, they've been fooled. That's it. It's not really complicated.
It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows it to those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows except those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. The gods are back, the Moors are strapped. We waking up, and we want our land back. Running off, that's a trap. You know them guys don't like that. Waking up from a nap, like where the hell my crown at? Take a step back, like I know this bitch ain't bite back. It's kinda crazy how this karma it strikes back. We enslaved the Slavs, so they slaved us right back. We called them niggas, then they niggered us right back. We brought them to light, but they ain't bring that right back. If I was lazy, dirty dancing with the baby, then maybe, then just maybe won't revolt like Haiti. I too sort love a poor Marcus Garvey your ass. No, but you are leading God body the man. Now I ain't gotta be bad, and you ain't gotta be mad, but the planet is heating up, so the first I'll be last. I got that melanin that's better than anything you ever medicine. We at your front door, wonder why you never let us in. Oh, I get it, you never wanted to put some credits in. Well, just forget it, cause I don't know if you can edit sin. We've been enlightened long before Thomas Edison. Skeletons to prove that you wasn't even relevant. In the Caucasus Mountains, cause the sun was your deficit. Captain Caveman with the plan of the Jesuits. Check my bloodline, but in time I bring the evidence. Self-governing body, so I don't need no president. Democrat, Republican, donkey versus elephant. I studied in law, so I ain't down with none of that. I self-law and master, so I'm running that. This Molotov cocktail burns faster, so I like the match. Despite the fact that ain't even what I'm mad at. I spit the truth, so here's the roof so you can yeah that. My skin is brown and here's the proof, but you ain't hearing that. Dead in the eyes of the law, that's why they call you black. Naming all caps when you fall, that's why I strike back. And strike that from the record ab initio. You gon' need more than some pressure, I got a vicious flow. I can take the road to the high, or I can hit them low. Try to calcify my third eye, oh you gon' have to go. Chemtrails all over the sky, and you don't wanna know. Dog on the side of my tribe, they coming no more.
If you believe that your history started on a slave boat, I can guarantee you that's where it ended too. That's what I'm saying. Then, after saying that, and so don't believe me, go back and do some studies past the 1700s, and I'll guarantee you, sure as you're sitting there listening, or wherever you are, watching, listening, you will find nothing but the word Moor, and that's another thing. Because we weren't called black. That description, maybe, black or more or whatever, but that's it. Know the difference between a description and an actual, person, place, or thing, noun. I mean, really.
It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows it to those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows except those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. From the pyramids to the project, the beginning is the part they want you to forget. Implant your memory with that noose around your neck. It's the king out for planning, it's set in full effect. The butler, the help, in 12 years a slave. Django and Selma, they get them accolades. They made a movie called Exodus about the gods and kings with an all-white cast from Egypt. Now that's a shame. They ain't never seen no movie about no European slaves. We were traveling the seas when they was living in caves. We had to civilize them, show them how to behave. In fact, we brought them light and taught them how to bathe. This is trading places with stolen identity. We agreed to be educated by our own enemy. Reverse psychology, I'ma need a lobotomy. An exorcism just to get this shit about me. Roz Mariah, Anna Eve, Miss Raheem, Tasha Reek, Cujo from Cannonland. Listen the nations in my womb has given from the breast. The empire's back, so you know what's next. The Moors are waking up, now you must confess. Yes, yes. The Moors are waking up, now you must confess.
Birthright theft. The whole deal was, where's my land that, for them? The whole deal was like, this is really quote-unquote promised land. This is really the quote-unquote heart of civilization. This is really what you might call Northwest Africa. That's what, and I say that to people so they can stop saying I'm going back to Africa and understand that they're in it. It's the Garden of Eden.
That's what they had in Columbus's journal that they arrived in Eden.
So what has happened is absolute lies. That's right. And the land of milk and honey is another terminology. So these things are important because as you're doing studies, and if it says the land of milk and honey, you need to know they're talking about the North American continent. If you don't know that, then you miss it. And that's part of our problem. That part of our problem is the miseducation. We have been lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to.
We recognize those who've served our country, those who are most dedicated. But we also recognize when they need specialized